Most people believe a grant is one on the page. The right narrative, the clean budget, the persuasive case for the work, and that is where all of the effort goes, into the words. But before a reviewer scores a single word of your project description, they've already started asking a quieter set of questions about the organization behind it. Can these people track the money? Can they actually deliver the work? Will they stand up to an audit? Your narrative answers the first question a reviewer asks, but your organization answers all of the rest. Today is about the space between those two things, because that space is where good applications quietly lose. I want to give you one idea today rather than 10, because it's the idea the rest of grant readiness stands on. It's the reason capable organizations doing excellent work keep coming up short on funding, and it's funding that they should be winning. I call it the Readiness Gap. In the next 15 minutes or so, I want to show you exactly what that is and why it's so hard to see it from inside your own organization. And one thing you can do this week to start seeing it clearly. One idea, one action. Let's get into it. You're listening to Hard Work Doesn't Win Grants, a podcast by The Grant Project. I'm Kat Riggs, founder of The Grant Project, where we help local governments and nonprofits build the systems, strategy, and compliance that competitive grant funding requires. There is a long-standing rationale in the grant world and the public sector. It's the belief that grants are decided on the page. Write a compelling narrative, build a clear budget, make a persuasive case, and the strongest application wins. It's a reasonable belief because the page is the part you can see. It's the part you control, and that's the part with your name on it. So when an organization decides to get serious about funding, it gets serious about grant writing. This closely follows the myth of the grant writer. And that myth is that a good grant writer will come in and save your organization quickly from all of your financial woes. And don't get me wrong, grant writers are amazing. We do have superpowers. But even the best grant writer is telling the tale of your organization, not just the project that you want funded. And here's the problem with this. Reviewers evaluate the organization behind the page just as closely as the page itself. And that's what they're trained to do. A funder is not only asking whether this project is a good idea, they're asking whether this grant application is a good bet. And a good bet is not proven by a paragraph. It's proven by whether the organization can receive the money, manage the money, deliver the work, and account for every dollar, every cent when the reporting comes due. The narrative opens the door. The grant application opens the door, but the organization is what the reviewer finds on the other side of that narrative. Think about what a reviewer is actually holding when they read your application. They have your project description, yes, but they also have your budget, which tells them whether you understand your own costs. They have your financial information, which tells them whether or not your books can separate grant funding from all of the other money in your organization. They have your past performance, which tells them whether or not you did what you said you were going to do the last time you had grant funding. They also have your registrations, which tells them whether or not you're even eligible to receive the award, but further, whether or not you're following the most basic procedures for writing, applying, and receiving federal funding. Every one of these is a window into the organization, not the project idea. And a reviewer looks through all of these. The strongest narrative in the world sits on top of all of that. If the organization underneath cannot answer the quiet questions, the narrative won't save it. That's not a knock on good writing. Good writing does matter. It's just that good writing describes the organization and the project, but it cannot substitute for an organization that isn't prepared. This is the first thing I want to talk with you about. When you focus all of your energy on the page, you're polishing one part of the application that was never really in doubt and leaving the other parts for the reviewer to actually scrutinize. So if the real evaluation is happening below the page, then the obvious question is, why is that so easy to miss? And the answer is not what you would expect. Here's the honest reason organizations fall into this gap. And it's not carelessness, and it's not a lack of skill. It's the gap that's genuinely hard to see from the inside, and there's a structural reason for that. The application work is visible and urgent. It has a deadline, a date on the calendar, a clear finish line, a document that either gets submitted or it does not. And when people talk about ROIs, people can see, I will pay for a grant writer. They cost X amount of dollars. The grant award coming in will be amount of dollars. So therefore, we have a return on investment for grant money coming in versus the cost of paying a grant writer. But when something has a deadline, it really does win your attention. When something has what's a perceived ROI, it automatically has to get your attention. And readiness work is the opposite of all of this. It's quiet, it's structural, it has no deadline at all. Setting up your books so grant dollars can be tracked cleanly, adopting a policy before you need it, renewing a registration before it lapses, writing down an outcome while it's fresh. None of that has a date attached to it, which means it loses the scheduling contest to whatever is due on Friday. Every single time. Sit with that for a second because it explains so much. An organization can operate for years, doing genuinely good work the entire time without anyone ever being handed the job of making it grant ready. Not because anyone dropped the ball, because the ball was never on anyone's calendar. The urgent work crowds out the important work, and readiness is almost always the important work with no urgency attached, right up until the moment that it does become urgent, which is the worst possible moment to start. And when that gap finally shows itself, it shows up in ways that you will recognize. An application asks for your documented cost allocation methodology, and the room goes quiet because no one is sure if the organization has one or if it's even written down. A budget gets built on assumptions the finance team was never actually asked to confirm. A SAM.gov registration lapses the week a submission was planned. A reviewer asks about past performance, and you have real strong outcomes that you just simply never documented. So you can't really prove what those performance measures were. Every one of those is a piece of grant readiness that no one built. And they discovered at the exact moment that it was needed that it was too late to build those things. None of those is a failure of effort. I want to be really clear about that because it's easy to hear this and start assigning blame. And blame is not the point, and it's certainly not useful. Each of these is a gap that's a structural piece that no one was ever assigned to put in place. Organizations that have these structures in place are not working harder or caring more than you are. They just built the quiet pieces back when there was no deadline forcing their hand. Let me show you that difference in the clearest way I know, with two organizations chasing the exact same award. And this is the gap made visible. Picture two organizations that hear about the same federal funding opportunity on the same day. Same program area, same eligibility, both want it, both are willing to work for it. The first organization starts gathering. The financials get assembled from scratch because they were never kept in a grant-ready form. Letters of support were requested cold because no partnerships were documented in advance. The budget gets built on estimates because there's no time to confirm the real numbers. For 3 weeks, this team works night and weekends, and every hour of that effort goes into assembling pieces that should have already existed. The second organization starts retrieving. The fit was already assessed, so the decision to pursue the grant was quick and confident. The evidence base is current because outcomes were captured as they happened from previous performance measures. The budget rests on a documented methodology because the finance conversation happened long before this deadline. And registrations are all active because they were never allowed to lapse in the first place. This team also works hard for 3 weeks, but they spend those 3 weeks on the application itself and the actual case for the actual project because everything underneath it was already in place. Both organizations worked hard, and that's the part that I don't want you to miss. The difference between them is not effort, and it's not talent. It's that one of these organizations did the readiness work back when no deadline was attached, and the other one is trying to do it now under the worst possible pressure on top of writing the application. And that is the readiness gap made visible. It is the distance between a strong idea and the systems that make that idea fundable. And here's the good news, because I don't want to leave you sitting with a problem. Every piece of readiness is buildable. None of it requires becoming a bigger organization or a different kind of organization than you already are. The gap closes exactly the way it opened, one ordinary piece at a time. except now it's on purpose instead of by accident. A chart of account that tracks awards cleanly, a policy adopted before it's needed, a registration on a renewal calendar instead of in someone's memory. Each piece is small, but together they are the difference between an organization that scrambles when an opportunity appears and one that responds to an opportunity from a position of strength. So here's your one action item this week, and it costs nothing but honesty. Pull up your last grant application or the next one you're planning, and instead of reading it as a writer, read it in the way a reviewer would. Don't look at the pros, look at what the application reveals about your organization. Can you produce clean financials that separate this grant funding from all other funding in your organization? Could you show a documented outcome from the last time your organization had a grant? Is every registration current today? Are you grading your writing? Or are you looking at the organization underneath it, which is exactly what a reviewer does? Whatever you find is not a verdict, it's a map, and it points to the work with the highest return on investment. That's it for this episode of Hard Work Doesn't Win Grants. If it gave you something useful, share it with someone on your team, and don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. The Grant Project helps local governments and nonprofits build the readiness, strategy, and compliance that secures funding for the long term. You'll find free guides and a way to work with us at thegrantproject.com. Until next time, remember, hard work doesn't win grants, readiness does.